Good morning, everyone. My name is Georgiadou. I'm here to talk about a qualitative study that I did when I was in the States. I finished my graduate studies in marriage and family therapy in Louisiana, and then I moved to Houston, Texas, and there I got to work with a homeless shelter for youth, 18 to 21 years old, uh, girls and boys, and I got to offer counseling services to them. And while I was doing that, I noticed there's a lot that these youth go through, a lot of abuse, history of trauma, sexual violence, physical abuse, things like that. And I was like, wow, these youth really have, they're just going against the odds. And while I was working with some of them therapeutically, I noticed that there was a few, few and far between, but there was a few nonetheless, and there was something special about these youth. They were able to adapt better, and it got me wondering, what's going on here? What are these youth doing better that would maybe help others also adapt to the circumstances of their life and hardships that they go through? So, let's see. Just wanted to briefly mention the definition of resilience, because that's really the essence of the abilities that the youth have that help them recover from adversity and adapt and return to a normal state of being. And so resilient youth, as they're mentioned in the literature, are youth that are able to overcome hardships and become productive despite the hardships that they go through, or, and that's my question, maybe because of them. But this is something that's yet to be supported by evidence in the literature. So, some of the risk factors I already mentioned: abuse, violence, poverty, neglect, being a member of a minority group, and one of the most important ones, especially in the States, in Texas, dropping out of high school at an early age. That's really the last straw that creates a lot of difficult circumstances for these youth to adapt later to the adult life responsibilities and survive, sustain themselves financially, maintain a job, and things like that. So, protective factors that have been identified in previous literature are having role models outside or maybe inside their extended family, and people that are in the literature, they're called natural mentors. So people that enter the youth's life at some point, and they serve as a role model, but they are not identified from the beginning as such. They kind of develop a relationship with the youth, and then they're able to create an example for them to follow. Also, when the school system is more sensitive to the youth's needs, that creates a buffer for them. They can refer to teachers and counselors and coaches and other people like that, and they're able to seek help that way through the school system. A lot of individual traits have been identified, and just as an example, the ability to self-regulate is one. Also, environmental factors are feeling that you belong to a group, a team, being part of something, and experiencing some sort of caring from others, that others respond to your needs and they pay attention to you individually. So my study, I'm presenting only qualitative data today, but I also gathered some quantitative data from the youth I studied, because I was hoping this would turn into a larger mixed methods project. So for now, I will present the data I got from 5 qualitative interviews I did with youth that I found at the homeless shelter where I was working. So these youth have, the participants of my study, they were able to enter a transitional living program. So that's the next step from the homeless shelter, is when you've shown that you can adhere to structure and rules of the shelter. So they give you the opportunity to enter a transitional living program, and they give you room and board for a longer period than what you would have at the shelter, which is about 90 days. Really the only criteria that I had to choose my sample was that they have refrained from alcohol and drug abuse, they avoided high-risk sexual behaviors, and they haven't had a criminal record, they haven't been involved in illegal behaviors, all these were very common among the youth I was seeing at the shelter. So a multiple case study was my methodology, at least for the processing of the data that I will present today. Covenant House was the shelter, and you can look it up. Covenant House has shelters in other countries as well, so it's really an international provider of shelter for homeless youth. The transitional living program was called Rites of Passage, and it was helping youth have a place to stay, and some financial stipend as well, anywhere from 6 to 18 months, up to 18 months. Okay, so my quantitative data I gathered using the Child and Youth Resilience Measure. These contain statements that the youth rated using a 5-point Likert scale, and I also used some of the questions, the qualitative questions that were included in this inventory, and some of them are listed here. The whole thing, my full contact with the youth lasted about 60 minutes, including them taking the questionnaire and the interview part. And there were 4 males and 1 female that were identified by the residential advisors and Covenant House staff, as I couldn't include in the research people that I had already seen in counseling for obvious reasons. So these youth voluntarily entered the study. There were no benefits as far as financial rewards or anything like that associated with their participation. So all the names I will mention here are pseudonyms, and my first participant is Eli. He's an African American male. He was born in Waco, Texas, which is a really small town. 20 years old, finished 1 year of college. He was living at Covenant House for the last 3 months, the time of the interview, and has changed homes 6 times the last 5 years. He grew up without his biological father in his life. He was forced, or as the youth say, kicked out of his mother's house, and had nowhere to stay until somebody he met on the street directed him to Covenant House. So he has history of smoking marijuana, watching pornography, and engaging in high-risk sexual behaviors, unprotected sex, and stuff like that. So he talked to me about this motivational program that he was part of when he was at Covenant House, and it's called The Champion Within. I think the turning point for him was when he started engaging himself into the study of the Bible, and believing in God helped him move on to greater and better things, which was not true for others in my study. There's really a conflict. Sometimes there's a conflict with religion and homeless youth, and other times they really find comfort and peace when they relate to God. My second participant is Preston. He was African American as well. He was originally from Louisiana but moved to Houston by himself, really. And he mentioned emotional and physical abuse by his father. I put some of his quotes on there. Whatever you see in quotes is verbatim what the youth told me. You can see he's saying the emotional stuff was affecting me, but I didn't know it. Until I got out of that. And now looking back at it, I see that the physical pain stops, but all the rest of the stuff my father said just keeps floating around in my head. Oops, sorry. Tanya was of Chinese descent. She was my only girl, and she moved around a lot with her parents, and when her parents got divorced, her mother was moving around a lot, so she was moving with her. And then when she was court-ordered to live with her father, she she experienced a very neglectful few years until she became 18. And as soon as she turned 18, she was asked to leave the father's house. And she, interestingly enough, she was very academically successful with a 3.3 GPA at the end of high school, out of 4. I think that's pretty significant considering what she was going through. Frank he's a Mexican-American male. He grew up in Houston. His father was an illegal immigrant, talking about immigrants, and he had to leave the country in 2004. So he had very little communication with him, and he took the initiative to track down his father's side of the family through Facebook and other social media, and which I thought was very brave, and it gave him an opportunity to meet some people that were actually supportive to him. And he also mentioned physical abuse by his stepfather. Ryan is my last participant, and he grew out of the foster care system. This is a very typical case of a homeless youth that turns 18. Yes. Yes, I know. Obviously, my time management is off today. Can I have another 5 minutes, maybe? Is that possible? Yes? Okay. Okay, thanks so much. I'm going to let you read most of the stuff on the slides, as I don't have the time to talk about everything. It was very hard for me to actually exclude things because I was seeing everything in the context and I didn't want to start taking stuff out. So that's the problem when you do qualitative research. So he moved around a lot as well. The family that adopted him, the foster family that adopted him for from 6 to 15 years of age. His adoptive father was physically abusive, and his adoptive mother introduced him to pornography and sexually molested him. So this is a kid that really had everything going against him, pretty much. So he has been at Covenant House for the last 10 months. He actually graduated high school, despite changing 4 high schools. He managed to graduate, and now he's working, and he's been sober from drugs for 10 months, or he was at the time of the interview. Okay, so these are the themes. I found some commonality between my 5 youth that I studied. Individual traits, curiosity, introspection, a heightened sense of self-awareness, and of course the number one motivation and internal drive. This is pretty much a very common finding in the literature for resilient youth. Interpersonal coping revealed that these youth had a very strong sense of setting goals, looking forward to the future. What is it that is in the picture for me? What is it that I would love to do, despite all that's going on around me? Interpersonal coping. Interpersonal coping was interesting for me because I looked at, these youth were advocating for themselves at certain times, and other times, instead of relying on others for support, they made the choice to isolate themselves or keep themselves on the down low, as they were saying, just under the radar, just so they don't get bitter consequences for advocating for themselves, as they were living in very abusive environments. So we see that, we might be encouraging youth in counseling to have self-confidence and speak out and express themselves, but sometimes that's not the most adaptive response to what's going on in their environment. And that's pretty much the most interesting finding in this study. So here you can see some of the quotes of the youth under each category, under each theme that I found. And Tanya was especially curious, and she was very introspective, and she really was the most solitary one. And I think 2 or 3 of them mentioned that I learned a lot of things on how not to do, how not to go about things in life. From the way I grew up, I want to do the opposite of what my mother or father or my caretaker did for me. And as Tanya said, these 5 youth were almost unnaturally driven. I mean, it was just amazing to see their strength, and that's really the beauty of this research, is uncovering all this hidden strength that people have in them. Let's see. So, for example, Frank took the initiative to visit his father in Mexico. His mother, I think she didn't know, and his father took him to Japan for a period of time because he was working there, and he got to work with his father. So that was a life-changing trip for him, and it made him think about how important education is, and he set a goal to finish high school as soon as possible. Ryan was another case that really blew me away. He had the ability to despite, living with people that abuse drugs, they were constantly getting evicted from their apartments, and he actually broke his ankle at some point. He was walking with an ankle boot 3 miles every day to go to his high school, because they were living in a different neighborhood than where his high school was, and if he changed high school, he would have missed a whole semester. So he was walking 3 miles back and forth. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, I will make this available to anyone who would like to see the full presentation, because I know there's a lot of things that are in there that I didn't get to talk about. So if somebody wants to give me their email, and I will gladly email the presentation to you. Let's see if there's anything I would like to mention. So this idea of hidden resilience is also mentioned in the literature, the unconventional responses, the ones that we don't expect. Sometimes the decisions that these youth made they weren't exactly what other people would expect them to do, but they were what the youth thought they should do in order to survive. Such as being emotionally detached, or seeing abuse as something normal in their life in order to maintain their sanity.
Maybe you go to a conclusion?
Yes, there it is. So all these findings were actually in line with the positive psychology paradigm, which is very prominent right now. And I think what these youth did more than anything is they imagined a better future for themselves, even while they were experiencing abuse and other hardships. These experiences created a motivation in them to progress and move past living the way they did. And also normalizing these situations was actually an adaptive response, although clinically we wouldn't consider it adaptive, but it worked for a lot of them actually. Thank you.
Thank you.